Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session?
The doctors are in. That's my James Bond.
Is that seriously the James Bond theme?
That's the James Bond theme,
My gosh.
You don't know the James Bond theme?
You know, it's been a while since I've watched a James Bond film, so to be fair. Also, you don't sound like the full orchestra, so...
It's not like it's changed much in the last 50 years. It's pretty much been the same theme for, since they started.
But you know what has changed is who owns what.
Yes. And James Bond now is soon, at least, I don't know when the deal is actually closing, but it's very soon, will be owned by Jeff Bezos. Which is funny because Jeff Bezos is like every villain in every James Bond movie.
Oh, no.
You know, he's a billionaire who's launching spaceships that look like penises into space. You know, if that's not like, I mean, it's also kind of like, Austin Powers.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it sounds a little more like Austin Powers. But yeah, it's kind of like Blofeld now is James Bond's boss.
Oh my gosh.
Blofeld's one of the main villains from James Bond.
Oh my word. Yes, apparently Amazon has purchased MGM, which I would say is one of the legacy studios.
It's absolutely one of the oldest studios in Hollywood. Back from James Bond dates back to the 60s with all 27 films or whatever there've been now.
Okay, so break down this merger because I saw the headline. I didn't really read the article fully. You're more versed on this than I am. So break it down for me and for our audience.
Well, $8.5 billion is what Amazon is paying for MGM, which gets them the much coveted James Bond library of films. It also gives them access to shows like some Emmy Award-winning shows like The Handmaid's Tale, Fargo, which actually are still on Hulu and will have to stay there until those contracts expire. But MGM also produces stuff like Survivor and The Voice, which is on Fox, which is owned by Disney. So it gets real confusing, I guess, at some point there. You know, Amazon has spent, billions on content development. They spent about $13 billion on content development in 2021, whereas MGM only spent about $1.5 billion. It sounds like a big deal because it's such a historic studio being bought by a modern company, but it's really not as big a deal to Amazon. To them, it's like, oh, we're going to buy MGM and then we'll own these different shows and stuff and be able to add that to Amazon Prime.
But okay, here's an interesting question. Well, I guess with Prime you have better control over the numbers, but part of the reason to acquire content, old content, like James Bond, I don't know if The Voice or Survivor really has rewatchability, but something like James Bond would. But back in the day, remember, you would play the shows, the movies on rerun in syndicate, and that's how writers and actors would keep making money because it was playing in syndication. But we don't have that as much anymore because it's streaming. Now, obviously, with Prime Video, they can just see who's buying it through the catalog. But I mean, is that really going to do anything for them?
That's a big question of what is Amazon going to get out of this? Amazon already had like Amazon Studios kind of, but I think for the most part, Amazon has been using that money on content to buy films from other studios or other, independent stuff. I mean, if you look at the content on Amazon, their originals are, they're basically buying shows that other people are making. Amazon isn't like Netflix that has, Netflix actually has built studio space. They have huge offices in LA, and then I think wasn't in Arizona or was it New Mexico? I think New Mexico. Netflix actually built studio space so they could produce things actually themselves. So it's a little bit different. MGM doesn't have studio space unless they're using the old Sony lot, or not the old Sony lot, their old lot, which is now Sony Pictures down in Culver City. That's, I guess, a possibility as far as, access to, resources within the industry. Amazon still to this day, is primarily an e-commerce, online shopping store. I'd have to look at the numbers to see what percentage of their revenue comes from Amazon Prime. But since they lump it into their services for shopping and shipping things for free, it's hard to determine, you know, how much of that business is theirs.
But their Prime model is interesting because you pay for the subscription, but then you still have to pay for certain movies and films. Or I'm sorry, for certain TV shows and films.
Right. They've got that whole paywall kind of thing between. We've talked about that many times before, how annoying it is, how they lump it all together, but you have to look at the little tags to see what's included for free.
Mhm.
Amazon is still like, and literally that's like a shopping center. You
Yeah.
go there to shop for video, but there's some stuff for free. I think that's the big differentiator between Netflix and Hulu and MGM and Amazon is Netflix and Hulu are pretty much all you can eat. Some, Hulu has some commercial level subscriptions where you have some commercials and no commercials. And people keep, teasing that Netflix might add commercials, but they keep hemming and hawing whether they're going to do that or not.
Now, Amazon actually has a really interesting history when it comes to content. Do you remember, like, years ago, I remember when I first moved to Hollywood, there's that big thing about submit your scripts to us, we'll see if we can produce them. Do you remember this? They had a studio.
It was Amazon Direct and Amazon Studios. In fact,
Yeah.
that's how we got our shorts on Amazon Prime, is they were accepting things from independent filmmakers through those websites and those systems they had set up.
Even before that, though, they had a screenwriting program. Don't you remember this? I remember talking about it. You could
I submitted to it. Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, I don't remember how long it went. I don't know if anybody ever got anything actually, picked up by them. It was like maybe around for maybe 3 to 5 years. But they tried in the beginning to be like what Netflix is today with a lot of original content. Somewhere along the way, it just didn't really work out for them. And they ended up doing what they're doing now.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, yeah, I totally see what you're saying. It's they tried to basically to do the entertainment business the Amazon way, and I don't think it worked. Amazon crowdsourced and kind of almost like Google or YouTube trying to crowdsource the content. In fact, Sony kind of did the same thing with the PlayStation Network. I was in that one competition for their emerging filmmaker thing, and that didn't pan out very well either. I think it's these, technology company trying to be an entertainment company kind of thing. Which Amazon really is a technology company because their technology is the store, the online system to handle all that stuff. The shipping stuff around the world is, their second business. The fact that they did this, I some would say it's trying to, buy their way into the, legacy, entertainment business, and there might be something to that, but we have yet to see what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're necessarily gonna make another James Bond movie or something. And then there's so many players involved in one movie anyway, and studios sharing space that it kind of a lot of it is more brand recognition, I feel. Like, for them to say, "Hey, we own these IPs," that's like, I wouldn't even have known that, Survivor and The Voice were MGM until you told me. I was like, "Oh," I assumed, like, for example, The Voice was Fox because it's on Fox. But then again, it's not like MGM has its own channel or app or something like everybody else.
Exactly. MGM is a powerhouse of production and and a lot of their sub brands and what have you, over the years have done tons of stuff. I mean, they go back, obviously they go back a ton, long way back, but they've produced things for a long time, a lot of stuff for television. In fact, some of my favorite shows on in syndication were done by MGM TV. Like Stargate was an MGM show. Some of that sci-fi stuff I like. And that's another franchise that's coming back. They're rebooting that franchise for film, and there's rumors of a TV show for that as well. MGM also did some Twilight Zone stuff, I think. Oh no, they did the Outer Limits. They had a really cool Outer Limits anthology series for a while.
Huh. So what do you think this means for writers?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going to change much. I mean, everyone talks about the consolidation in the industry. There were the 6 big studios. MGM was not one of them. MGM is a smaller studio, actually. So, consolidation, people always say that's bad because then you wind up having this corporate movie production methodology kind of thing, where, that's why we keep getting the same kinds of movies over and over again. We have franchises. You don't see original ideas coming out of the big studios, really. It's always either something that was a book, something that was a movie before and it's being remade and rebooted, or something that from TV that's going to film, or vice versa. Those kinds of things. They only do things that are quote unquote safe bets. It's probably not going to change much. People do worry about consolidation, but I don't. Here's the thing: Amazon, by buying MGM, basically, I don't want to say becomes a more, it becomes another studio. So you take one of the classic studios, it's bought by a newer studio. Well, Amazon wasn't a studio before, so it now creates a new studio that takes the place of the previous one. So the consolidation is kind of 1-to-1 there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're buying it more for the brand name than
Yeah,
anything. I don't know that Amazon, well, MGM doesn't even have physical space, so I don't know that Amazon's like, cool, now we're Fox Studios and we have a physical space to film things.
exactly.
That doesn't change. But I would disagree with you on your point. I think it does change 2 things. First of all, whenever you have mergers, whoever your contacts are might change. So it's quite possible that if you had a contact that you were pitching to at MGM, they're gone, just like any other
Mm-hmm.
merger. So there's that to keep in.
Sure.
And whenever there's a merger, people go all over the place and you got to keep track of. So it's quite possible your contacts change. But the other thing, and maybe not with Amazon so much, because a lot of these, I would say like 90% of the studios are experimental, but some of them, Disney primarily, you have to be careful what you pitch to them because everything's going under that umbrella and they have a certain image to portray. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say pretty much anything you pitch to Disney has to fall in line with a certain thing, even if it's under the Marvel or the Pixar or the whatever, the other brand. Maybe under the
Mm-hmm.
Fox brand you can push the envelope a little bit, but anything else I would think you have to kind of run it through that filter. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon doesn't have that, kind of family friendly, you know, persona to live up to. So it's kind of, in fact, I think if anything, MGM would give Amazon more credibility with its huge back catalog. Besides James Bond, they have
Mhm.
thousands of films. For people who like classic movies. In fact, if you look at, I always went to Amazon, and there's a batch of really good shows and originals that they've done, but then there's also a ton of mediocre stuff that they did just to add to their catalog, to have more stuff to watch, because that was the thing when they started. They didn't have anything, so they needed to build a catalog quickly, so they really added a lot to it. So maybe perhaps this is a signal that they're trying to look more for quality. Like if I don't know what the situation with The Handmaid's Tale or Fargo is, but those are Emmy winning shows that are on Hulu, that if they continue to run with them, they could bring them onto Amazon Prime, if after they finish their runs on Hulu.
But Amazon already has a pretty good catalog. I'm thinking particularly, what's that one? Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. That one did really
Mm-hmm.
well. They had a couple.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they've
Wasn't
done great.
Man in the High Castle? That was theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of some other ones off the top of my head. I don't know if I can count the new Lord of the Rings. That one's gotten mixed reviews.
Well, it hasn't even come out yet, so
Well, the
we don't know
reviews of
yet.
it are like, well, okay, really side tangent. They'd been talking about that one forever, that I thought it had already come out, because that one has been in the works for years.
Oh, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it
And
too.
then it finally comes out, or it's close to coming out, and the reviews on it are really bad. So I
Ah,
don't know. I'm just like, oh. And then part of me is like, didn't that already happen? So that's why I sometimes feel you shouldn't, what's the word? You shouldn't advertise your stuff too early, because then people are like,
yeah.
oh, it already happened, whatever.
No, exactly. And the thing about talk about the award winning stuff like Marvelous Miss Maisel. it got like 20 Emmy nominations. But the
Mhm.
fact is, that's almost half of all the nominations that Amazon got. So, they're getting a lot of nominations, but it's on a few shows. So I still think they have a quality issue. And if you look at the percentage of their catalog, it's like, you know,
It's hit or
it's it's
miss.
a
It's
it's hit
very
or
hit or
miss.
miss, yeah.
Exactly.
Although they won the award, for what's that one? That movie with Casey Affleck a couple years ago. Set in, like, Maryland or whatever. I'm blanking.
Oh
You know what I'm talking about?
gosh,
Drama.
Was it Manchester
By
by
the
the
Sea.
Sea or
Yes, yes.
yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was funny because I could appreciate it. I thought it was a good movie. It's not one I'd wanna watch again. My husband loved it. I was
Oh
like, I
yeah.
can see why it won the awards, but it wasn't something that I was like, "Woohoo," you know?
Did
Um,
not see it.
oh, I mean, it's worth a watch, it's worth a
Yeah.
watch, good story, but, um, anyway, but yeah, that was, I think, Amazon's first award. I wanna say
Oh,
that was the first award for their studio ever, and then,
that'd be
from
cool.
there, and that was a couple years ago, but anyway. So, I mean, like, they are hit or miss, but, like, when they hit well.
Yeah. No, and they've got potential. I mean, and maybe bringing on the expertise of MGM Studios will help them, further, develop, you know, higher caliber shows. I mean, it seems like that's the battleground,
Mhm.
because we don't have ratings per se for like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. Awards are really the battleground for those guys. And Netflix and Hulu have been just decimating the broadcast networks in the nominations these last 5-10 years.
Can I digress real quick, though? Speaking
Sure.
of awards and ratings, the streamers did it to themselves because for whatever the way they've designed it, you can't find the ratings or you can't find the numbers of who's watching. And remember, it's caused an issue already for actors and writers and stuff because we need to know our royalty numbers. But people are sick of awards. People, like, how many times have we heard now? People don't care about awards anymore. So it's like, you're doing it to yourself and you're kind of eroding the very thing that would tell you the statistics you need. Because
I mean, they have the statistics. They just
they don't
don't
wanna
share them
disclose them.
very often.
Because awards are basically people in the industry giving awards to other people in the industry, and that's why people are getting sick of it. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen, news reports or commentary pieces on, "We're sick of awards, guys. Nobody cares anymore." So, I remember back in the day, Oscars and Emmys and all that were huge to watch on TV, and even people
Hmm.
like me who weren't in the industry at that point, we cared about it. Now people don't seem to care as much. So if you took away awards, the only thing left for statistics is those numbers that they're not disclosing, but they're going to
Right.
have to because there's no other way to have a true barometer.
Exactly, and it factors into how much you should get paid because with ratings on streaming services, the only way to know, like, I don't know I don't know how they do it. We should probably get somebody on who knows more about this to explain it. But if your movie or show is award winning, or if it's getting you know millions and millions of views on a streaming platform, do you think that makes it you should get paid more for the work you did on that show? Because that means that more people are going to that platform to watch that show, which means that platform is getting more revenue. It's hard to do a one-to-one because it's not like how many ads are viewed during your show, unless you're like a Hulu where you do have some advertising, people watching on ad supported platforms.
Mhm.
But like on Netflix, you get paid what you get paid in your contract. And I don't know if they have any sort of bonuses for, movies or shows that get high ratings or high view counts. So that'd be something interesting to find out.
I mean, but when you think about that too, I mean, I guess to kind of go down the rabbit hole, how much of that is because people were already paying into that streaming service? For example, I'm cheap, so I don't wanna buy 20 apps. So let's say I have, Netflix and, I don't know, CBS, so something very targeted, and then Netflix, which is a little more general. I'm not gonna necessarily search out the Amazon show, even if you tell me it's great, maybe I'll see if it's on DVD, because I already am paying into 2 services. So if I'm
Right.
watching those 2 services, then of course I'm gonna watch whatever you put in front of me because I'm already paying into that. So how can you
Hmm.
say, "Oh, this show or this film is spectacular, maybe it was just because people were already buying into that platform. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's a hard way to gauge because there's no, at least with movies or with broadcast TV, it's free, so you can choose whatever you want, and then they had truer readings of the numbers.
Right. For writers, what you're saying, is those numbers are all we ever had to bank on as far as what we were going to get as royalties for our work. So if people are already being driven to certain platforms based on other factors like free shipping on Amazon Prime, it's up to the platforms to make sure there's enough viewers to watch our shows and films. Like we're counting on Netflix to drive more viewers to our shows, and then that gets into the whole algorithm of what they show you when you log in, and it says suggested for you. It's all based on what you watched before, and I've talked about how that gets you into a rut because it doesn't say try something new. It never says, hey, try something you've never watched before. It always says try something you've watched. So how do let me back up. This comes back to the whole problem is we used to have 3 or 4 TV networks and that's all we had.
Yeah.
And when you had that few of shows and that few of networks, everybody tuned in and watched it, and that's why the awards mattered. But now, like what you were saying, is such a diverse, a dispersed viewing audience that even if one show wins an Emmy Award for best drama or best comedy, a lot of people are like you said, they're either not going to have the service it's on, or they're not going to care because they're watching something different because they never got around to seeing it because there's too many things to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason award shows are diluted and their ratings have dropped. It's because fewer people are watching the award-winning shows because there's so many other places to be spending your time entertainment-wise.
And money. That's the big
and
thing.
Your money.
Because is the average consumer really going to buy 20 apps just to watch one award-winning thing on each app? No, they're not.
Exactly. Right. And whereas used to be a situation where the broadcast networks produced everything and then syndicated it out to the other networks, other, affiliates and things, then they could get secondary revenue on it. That doesn't happen now. Everybody keeps everything in their little fiefdoms or walled off fiefdoms. So going back to Amazon, they're trying to expand their fiefdom to content they know people watch. And the James Bond collection of films is, a huge draw. It's going to keep eyeballs on their platform is what it's going to do, because the fans of those movies are going to go there. Remember, people used to buy all these movies and have collections,
Mm-hmm.
You have all the Star Wars movies or you have all the, the James Bond movies. But now because they're all on streaming, usually like, well, I can just watch it on streaming. But when they change platforms like this, like the licensing deal for James Bond, which I'm not even sure where it is now.
You lose it on a certain platform.
It's going to whatever platform it's on, it's going to leave and go to MGM. MGM's going to go to Amazon. So they might draw the people who, some people are like that. They're like, I don't care what's on TV. I want to watch a James Bond movie every night of the week, and they'll go through all 27 of them and then start over. So there's I don't know, not millions, but there's an audience out there that will be like, sure, oh, that's where, if you want to watch James Bond, you have to go to Amazon. Okay, now I'm going to subscribe to Amazon Prime. And I'm going to discontinue my, Hulu subscription or whatever it is, wherever it is now. I think it's still a small percentage of people that are going to do that. It's not going to boost Amazon's numbers tremendously, but I think if you look at their full catalog, I think it'll be, it's going to draw some people, especially when you get into the classics. I think there's a lot of people out there who'd like to watch the classic movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting back into the issue of should we be going back to the old stuff or developing new IP? And that's a debate we've had before, and we already know kind of the answer to that. But what's interesting, going back in the conversation regarding royalties and streaming and not having the numbers disclosed, it kind of makes me wonder because of how things... So you sent a very interesting article, we can put in the show notes, about how 8 companies own all your favorite channels. And It's not a monopoly necessarily, but it does make me wonder if one of 2 things might end up happening to writers in the future, which is either, one, because writers are still independent contractors, right? You can write for any network you want. You can sell and pitch to anyone you want, contracts, with each company. So in order to get your visibility, writers probably have to kind of do what actors are doing, get big on social, toot your own horn, plug yourself, put yourself out there, right? To get the visibility so your numbers will go up and people will watch your movies and your shows that you
Mm-hmm.
write. Or we might go back to the old studio system, which is where studios owned certain writers and owned certain actors, and they might loan them out to different companies, but you were contracted to work for a certain studio. I don't
Right.
know, because we're kind of getting to that point. It feels like there's so
Right.
few places.
Well, you have big actors making deals with companies like Netflix, like Adam Sandler, did an exclusive deal. He was making movies for Netflix, so that's why you haven't seen him in the theaters at all in the last 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's some of that is happening actually.
Which might not
Hmm.
be bad for fledgling writers, because if they're willing to develop you, that's cool. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Hollywood or the entertainment industry, especially not after the pandemic, is in a place where they would want to develop talent. Whereas back in the beginning of Hollywood, they would. They would develop talent. But I don't think, I mean, you see it in music, you see it everywhere. They don't
Yeah,
want to develop talent. They want to know you can do it.
I think Hollywood still values established writers. Again, it's like anything in Hollywood. They want to go with something, a known quantity.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to take a chance. So that's why, you see people get overall deals at certain studios still, producers and writers, that they can, they're going to, next 5 movies are going to be with a certain studio, first look deals and that kind of thing. So that does happen. And I don't think it's going to be happening with the developing. And I think that happened with Amazon, like we talked about, how they did start by looking for, writers of all kinds and kind of opening it up to everybody. In fact, I think that thing was free to submit too. Anybody could submit something.
But they
It's
probably
going to
didn't
be
wanna
more
develop talent.
gated.
Yeah, because, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
developing talent takes time, energy, and, I mean, I'm not, I wasn't obviously in their, uh, deciding room or whatever you'd call it, but I'm sure they waded through a lot of junk, you
No,
know?
absolutely. And that's the option. You have the option to you open it up to everybody and everyone submits all their stuff and you have to wade through it, and find the diamonds in the rough, or find the needle in the haystack, versus doing what, other, established studios do, and that they have layers and layers of gatekeepers that filter this stuff out, that you don't accept everything. Everything has to come from an agent or has to be, recommended, that kind
Mm,
of stuff.
yeah.
It's going to entrench Amazon even further into the Hollywood, historical, industry. Kind of, they're not going to be so much the new player on the the new kid on the block anymore, I should say. They're going to be, kind of, hopefully, and hopefully that'll make for, better productions and more interesting stuff there.
We'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
I'll put a link to their catalog of, there's actually a lot of stuff in their catalog that they could do a lot of this rebooting. We talk about no new ideas.
Mhm.
I mean, things like the Pink Panther, like I said, the Outer Limits, stuff like Dead Like Me. That was a great show. I love that show. They had a lot of stuff on Sci-Fi. They had stuff on FX. They have ABC. So it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of these old series and shows and movies start to migrate to Amazon Prime from these other platforms and networks. Because MGM didn't have a single exclusive; they were all over the place.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, let us
What do
know
you guys
what you
think's going
guys
to happen?
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
are you gonna? Is this going to make you want to watch Amazon Prime more or less?
Let us know at WG Therapy on Twitter. Find us on Instagram under the same handle, and we will see you guys soon.